Your brains in gear, enjoy the day, and look after yourself. Have some water. You may end up with a headache.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, David.
By the way, Stephen is my lead out here when I'm not here. He can syntax and write as good as I can. And the seminar doesn't stop when you leave here. You guys all know how to operate computers. You get home, you can Skype me, you can send me emails, ask me anything you want for as long as you study this stuff. I mean, I've got students that have been with me 15 years. And we talk on a regular basis. And I answer everybody's questions. And I don't care how many questions you want to ask me. So we go through 3 stages in life. Your first stage is you do not know what you do not know. No one was aware of syntax until you saw this program. Once you saw it, you were aware of what you did not know, which means you didn't know about the math interface on language. For that fact, for 8,500 years, the entire population of the planet Earth in 5,000 languages did not know about the math interface on syntax until 1988 when I broke the code. And then when you know what you know, you become a teacher and stand up here like I do and educate people. And Stephen is in that location now where he can stand up here for 20 hours and put on a 20-hour seminar also. And then there's a lot of things that he knows the right things to say, but he hasn't had the 74,000 hours of knowing what the wrong things are to avoid. And it's like you've got 100 landmines on the floor here, and you got to go from that wall to that wall. How many of them do you get to step on before you get to that wall? In other words, how many mistakes do you get to make? 0, right. So like he said, I got 73,000 hours of mistakes from walking around stepping on landmines and going through the hardships of life, but I got 1,000 hours of how to do it right. And through process of elimination, like Sherlock Holmes says, when you remove all the things that cannot be, regardless how ridiculous the end result is, that is the fact. And so the math syntax now creates the facts on a mathematical level where when you write a sentence frontwards, it says the same thing when you write it backwards. And we're gonna start off using the math interface to show you how this works and how we broke the code. This one here is. If you take your math problem, 2 plus 3 equals 5, and you want to check it, well, it's 5 minus 3 equals 2. If you want to multiply, 2 times 3 equals 6, and 6 divided by 3 equals 2. Now this all came about, let's see. Well, I'll just use this. Spiral notebooks. Remember, some of you got some with the red line down the side here? Well, the way this code got broke was on April 6th in 1988. Now, for 3 years, I worked out math problems and nothing seemed to work. Then one morning, I got up half asleep and I wrote 1 plus 2 equals 3, 3 minus 2 equals 1 on the red line. Went and got my coffee, some toast, came back and I said, but when I sat down, it was faced this way and I'm going, oh, that's a graph. So I grafted it. And when I grafted it, I broke the code. So deductive reasoning says that a fact, whether it's frontwards or backwards, is still a fact. Like in a math problem. If we have a 2 here and we've got a 2 here, nothing's changed. 5 here, 6, 6. Those are whole objects. Therefore, they become the facts. We gave those the F's. Then the one thing that appears in front of a fact was an equal sign in a math problem. In a math problem, the equal sign has no value, does not modify anything. So if it can't modify, and and or are the conjunctions. So we gave that a C. Then you've got, when you went to school and you studied math, you had the negative, the positive, the negative, the positive, when you did grafting. So any motion from one side to the other resulted in motion. Well, here you've got a plus 3 and a negative 3, so therefore you're going from one side to the other. Same thing in multiplying, dividing. Because the motion constituted the verb. So we factored out the operation, and we gave this a verb. Because the verb does not modify the condition of a fact. It's like this pen here. It's in motion, but it's still a fact. So, and the only verb that exists, you have two verbs, is a singular, are is plural, and the verb is thinking. But thinking is the condition of state as a fact. Therefore, the thinking condition of state when in motion is the only word that both maintains two conditions, a verb and a fact at the same time. Because everything that happens in the world is a result of something thinking before it can actually happen. Running is not a verb. Jumping is not a verb. That's a condition of your thinking. Those are conditions of state as an end result, called order of operations. So the only thing that was left was plus and minus, multiply and divide. And those we assigned to the prepositions, because when you write the sentence, for the bridge is over the river, and for the river is under the bridge, the over and the under are opposite prepositions. Both pictures are identical. Now we can take, and I've been doing this for almost 15 years now. People come to me with Bible passages because everyone wants to know who God is, or wants to know what the Bible really says. 1/3 of all the words are missing from the Bible, and the Quran, and Buddhism, and Hinduism, and all the great religions in the world. 1/3 of all the words are missing. And so when you can take whatever is written and then go out and put the correct prepositional phrases in now time. Remove the negative because you can't perform negative. Remove the illusion and create a fact. Now, a lawyer would write this like that. The bridge is over the river. And you were all taught when you were in 5th grade in school, never start a sentence with a prepositional phrase and never end a sentence with a prepositional phrase. Well, if you don't end a sentence with a prepositional phrase, you've got a dangling participle verb as an answer, which means your sentence is incomplete. If you start the sentence without a prepositional phrase, your first two words, bridge, is going to become a verb. In this case, it's an adjective, because you've got one is an adverb, modifies the adjective, bridge, which modifies the pronoun is, which now is, no, this one here is a 1, 2, 1, 2. No, this one here is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Show me a verb bridge and a river bridge. I mean a river verb and a bridge verb. Now, when the government writes their instructions on most of their forms, they don't use adjectives. They only use adverb, verb, adverb, verb, adverb, verb throughout the entire sentence structure. Now, we did an exercise. My daughter was in high school. She was a senior. And they had to write an essay, 300 words on one sheet of paper. And I told my daughter, I says, would you like to win first place? And she says, well, yeah, it's a $100 savings bond. And 300 children entered the competition. I says, well, because we know the operations of syntax, we're going to write 2 letters. The first one is going to be an adverb verb, 150 adverbs, 150 verbs. No adjectives, no pronouns, just adverb verb. The second one, we're going to use prepositional phrases, and we're going to write the letter correct in syntax. And then we're going to assign a fictitious name. And when you hand in your paper, you will slip this syntax copy into the pile. So at the end of the week, the announcement was made that my daughter Katie had won first place in the competition. Anybody that had even put one adjective in had created a coloring effect rather than a modifying effect. So she got the $100 savings bond. The one that was written with the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax, the principal got on and said, we have a mental student that got escaped from a mental institution, is in the school, and used the name on the quantumized document to look for this person, if anybody knew. And only my daughter was the only one that knew what the name meant assigned to the papers. A few weeks later in school, my daughter says to the teacher, when are you going to teach the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax? Teacher stands up and says, you're suspended. Get out of my class. You get an F for the course. So she goes down to the dean and says, I just got kicked out of English class. You know who my dad is? He goes, yeah. Go back to English class and send the teacher down here. So the teacher comes down and gets an earful of the fact that I disqualified all the books in the school when I signed up my daughter to go to that school in the first place. And I paid her tuition in gold eagles, American gold eagles. So it kind of stood out when it comes to registration that somebody would pay in gold eagles. So she was reinstated in the class and she got an A for English. And the teacher never bothered her again because she knew how to syntax. When she was 12 years old, she took the 38-page insurance forms for Florida for public employees, and she syntaxed the 38 pages and sent it to the Congress of the state of Florida. And the insurance company got fired, and the people who wrote it got fired. And that insurance policy was never initiated. In January of 2008, I syntaxed the mortgage documents and AIG's insurance forms. And I sent it back to him syntaxed. That's what caused the Great Depression we've got today. Under mail fraud, Title 18, Section 1341, they couldn't issue new mortgages because they were fraudulently conveyed. They knew they'd have a storm of once this got out to the people, yelling fraud and mail fraud, and the insurance companies couldn't write policies because they didn't have to pay on it. And that's what's created the disruption in the whole world system. This technology, when it was created, disqualified every treaty, trust, and contract worldwide. On March 1st, 1997, we syntaxed the trust industry in the Internal Revenue Service through the post office. Went out and there was $40 trillion held in trust worldwide. The Postal Service has today seized $33 trillion of that $40 trillion that was held in trust, of the 25 million trusts that existed worldwide.
Seized.
And then the other thing that took place just in August of 2009 was that this happened over in Auckland. I did a seminar for 90 Maori chiefs. And I explained to them since 1800, the post office has never had the correct sentence structure, communication syntax for any treaty, trust, or contracts anywhere on planet Earth. Well, we had people in the audience that were undercover CIA. Word got back to the post office to this effect. And in September, the United States Postal Service ordered Bern, Switzerland to turn over 47,000 numbered accounts worth $4 trillion, which the United States Postal Service was able to capture and put in the hopper. So this technology has made the post office about $38 trillion profit. The United States government only collects $500 billion a year in taxes from the 186 million people that pay taxes in the United States. We have a population of 300 million.
Can you explain about the post office being able to do that, not the banks or the government?
Okay, the post office, who's on a $100 bill? American, Benjamin Franklin. Who's the first Postmaster General of the United States? 1775, Benjamin Franklin. What's the decimal point for 1? 1.00, 100. During the Civil War, Grant was Postmaster General of our country. Lincoln was killed, so therefore he got put on a $50 bill. What's the decimal point for a country divided in 1/2? 0.50, $50 bill, Grant. Lincoln, or George Washington, was a letter carrier. He went on the $1 bill because he was the first president of the international bankruptcy with England. because he became president as a letter carrier, he was put on the $1 bill. Lincoln, 70 years later, after the first international bankruptcy of 70 years ended in 1859, was the president. He went on the $5 bill because he was Postmaster General of Springfield, Illinois. He was also placed on the penny because he was the first of the second international bankruptcy. Add 70 years to that, and you get 1929. Now, in the United States, November 2nd is our presidential elections. So this was the end of our second international bankruptcy. Now, our first bankruptcy was established on September 17th, 1789. My birthday is September 17th, so it's easy to remember. Plus, when you have a trust expires at the end of 45 days if the trustee is no longer part of the trust. So you got a 45-day grace period. If you had 45 days to September 17th, you get November 2nd, which is our presidential election day. Now in 1929, United States Congress, Senate, Legislature, and Supreme Court voted to end our second bankruptcy and become sovereign, go on the gold standard. So they told England, we're not going to renew. So England, under the 5-day rule, had to tell the American public that they were going to close all the banks and credit unions because they were operated under the Bankruptcy Act. Subtract 5 days from November 2nd, you got October 29th, 1929, which throws the entire planet Earth into the 10-year Great Depression because commerce now is disrupted. Add 70 years to that, and you get November 2nd, 1999. The United States of America did not elect a president on that day because they voted to end the bankruptcy, and MasterCard controlled 98 cents on a dollar. And MasterCard was established back in 1964. So the private corporations of the convenience of MasterCard captured all the money, but we did it domestically. We can now end the bankruptcy. Now, as a result of the March 1st, 1997 code breaking of how to seize the trust, the United States government was able to harvest enough money from the trust industry, which was held in safety deposit boxes in numbered accounts worldwide, to pay off our international debt. And by November 2nd, 1999, we had $6 trillion surplus in the United States of America, which made us sovereign, and our third bankruptcy ended. We did not elect a president on November 2nd, 1999. The United States government said that 2/3 of all the states, 38 of the 50, had to recount all their ballots. Now, this was just an illusion to keep people watching the ballot counts while the 90 days runs. No law under the Treaty of Versailles, 1906, becomes legal in any federal government and anywhere on planet Earth for 90 days. Add 90 days to November 2nd, and you get February 2nd, 2000, at which time President Bush was appointed the next president of the United States of America corporation. The democracy of America is dead. It no longer exists. We are a corporation. New Zealand is a corporation. You guys are still in bankruptcy here. You're one of the few countries that are still in bankruptcy. Now, last time I was out here in Australia, we did a little check. Does anyone in this room know when your first money was issued in Australia? 1812. So if you take 1812, I think we know.
Is that a good thing? Bankruptcy?
Well, the post office, everybody here has Queen Elizabeth and Queen Victoria on your money, correct? Throughout your history. And your different denominations on your money are the Postmaster Generals of Australia. Your coins have Queen Elizabeth on them, and she is the Postmaster General of Australia through your international banking treaty, which you're in bankruptcy with the International Monetary Fund through London. Now, London, you're looking at England, you are not under English rule. You are controlled by the post office. And the post office was the ones that set up camp out here in 1918. So if you do the math, and you got 1812 and 70, you got 1882 and 70, 1952 and 70. $2022. That's when your bankruptcy ends.
Is there any paperwork we can find these dates?
Oh, international bankruptcy has been around for 6,500 years. That's 70 years as an international bankruptcy. It was established by the pharaohs in 4700 BC by the Masons.
I mean, can we find the information about the
Oh yeah,
bankruptcy for Australia?
international bankruptcy, yeah,
Where?
at the library. Pull up your postal codes. You got to research your post office, your history of money. Talk to coin dealers, people that are professional coin dealers that trade in the currencies, the history of your country.
So there are documents in existence.
Oh yeah, that's how I found it.
So what's going to happen in 2022?
You guys are going to come out of bankruptcy and you're going to become sovereign. However, you guys can end your bankruptcy. Now, I don't know if you were aware of this, but on September 2009, your dollar was 73 cents to the U.S. currency. I just paid $1.03 for an Australian dollar at the airport. You guys are worth more than U.S. currency right now.
Wow.
So,
Nearly 91 cents at the moment.
no, it's $1.03.
Well, the commission did the rest. Which way,
Yeah,
back to America and get money.
yeah. Well, they're taking a commission out of it. But the exchange rates, you guys are dead even with the U.S. right now. Our money's going down, your money's going up. Look at how many mines you guys got. Your gold, your silver, your molybdenum, your lithium. You guys control 20% of the world's lithium out in the mines out west.
Isn't lithium used to benumb the brain?
Lithium's for making batteries, lithium diodes. And it's also used, rare earth material is used for the glass on computer screens.
I thought it was also used as a deep press people.
So would we?
Well, I'm sure there's alternate.
As a drug. So it is.
No, that's a mineral. They talked about.
I'm talking about a mineral. It's used for making lithium diode batteries for your cell phones, computers, and now 600 million electric cars is what they got targeted. 30 million a year.
Can I ask you to go back and explain what you mean by captured, that they captured all this money from the trusts? What do you mean by captured? Physically they took the money out in gold bars, or they just changed a few numbers on the screen?
No. When on March 1st, 1997, I syntaxed the Boston Trust. There were 2 million copies of it. Then I did the Panama Trust. There were 2 million copies of that. When you use the mathematical syntax, the definition of the words are wrong. If the trust has the words are incorrectly used, then that means that the definition doesn't say what the trust was engineered for in the first place. It means that everyone was illiterate that created the trust, bought the trust, and used the trust. The Internal Revenue Service, going all the way back to when it was created, also couldn't read and write, because there wasn't a math interface to prove what the value of every word is. Now, because of this program, you have 68 prepositions and 38 articles. That's 1,800 divided by 2 means every word in the English language has 900 definitions. Yeah. Pen. Pen by itself is a pronoun. If I say the pen, the is an adverb, which modifies the verb pen. Modification is change, change is motion, motion is action, action is verb. Okay, now if I say of pen, of was normally the preposition and the was the article. Separated, they both become adverbs. So now you have an adverb of pen, or by pen, or with pen, or over pen, under pen, doesn't matter how you do it. If you separate all the prepositions and all the articles, this is going to become a verb. Now if you use a prepositional phrase, for this pen, for my pen, for your pen, for his pen, for her pen, with her pen, with his pen. See, every time I change the preposition or change the article, I change the ownership and I change the operation of the pen. If I change the operation of pen, and I can do it 900 times, if I put two nouns together, now I've got 81,000 variables. If I put three words together in a sentence, now I've got 7.2 million variables. I put the fourth word in, I got 640 million variables. I put 5 words in a sentence, I got 5.4 billion variables. And it goes on and on. So the government comes back and says, we can't do that. We don't have a computer that can break the code because the amount of terabytes of information just to write a single document with 300 words, so you'd have 900 to the 300 power. I mean, there's no computer in the world that has enough terabyte capacity to do that. My brain does it as fast as I can speak. I can syntax and write and do the conversions. So the human mind is really unique in its ability to use deductive reasoning and logic to create the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax. And with this level of accuracy, the government said that's impossible. Well, I've got a website of 100 pages. I have my books that I wrote, 107 pages. I've got 2,200 lawsuits that are all syntaxed correctly. I says they're all over the theater. Every judge, attorney, barrister has to study this information and be proficient at it, so when we walk into the courtroom, they know exactly what we're talking about. And then they play the dummy up game. Well, what's the first rule of law? It's called knowledge. If you don't have knowledge, you can't play in the sandbox. You can't participate. So you got to have the knowledge to understand what is being said. When I went into your courts here in Masseuse's case, I started attacking. Now, Dr. Masseuse has had 200 trials over the last 13 years. The case is currently running up a bill of $80 million. And I went in there and in 10 minutes I syntaxed day number 1 lawsuit, 2 pages, 186 mistakes on it in syntax. Disqualifies day 1. What happens when you build a foundation on sand? It's going to collapse. Well, if you commit a fraud on day number 1, the other 199 hearings are also fraud because they were predicated on day number 1. And the judge stands up and says, I don't have a pay scale high enough to deal with this. He says, you're not a barrister. You can't represent him. I says, yes, I am. When I came through your customs and immigrations, you put a stamp on my passport. And I signed my name across your stamp. As postmaster, that makes me a postmaster, banker, and judge, and a immigrations and custom officer of your country. So therefore, my passport, my American passport, gives me permission to enter into the foreign vessels. All courthouses on planet Earth are the same jurisdiction. I don't care if I'm in Wisconsin or I'm in Sydney, Australia. All courthouses are foreign vessels in dry dock. They are controlled by the port authorities, which are controlled by the Department of Transportation, which is controlled by the post office. That's the chain of command. The post office is responsible for script, which is money, pays everyone, moves the commerce, and pushes the vessels around through the Department of Transportation and then docks them in the ports. Every one of us are vessels in dry dock.
This chain of command, if we were to walk into a court and mention this chain of command, the judges here would know?
Yes, they do. All the judges are required to view my videotapes, read my book, and study this program on my internet. And believe me, they have copies of over 2,200 of my lawsuits. Matter of fact, last week when I got seized over in Australia, they completely downloaded my computer and 5 of my chips. They got over 500 lawsuits off of that, and including 135 lawsuits here in New South Wales, all the amicus curiae, the quo warranto complaints, and all the people that were involved in each one of these that are suing the government for fraudulent conveyance of language to extort rights and privileges. So they're going to have a lot of work to do when they go through all the programs, but they're going to see that we call it boilerplate. It means it can't be defeated.
And we can get in hard copy about this chain of command?
Hard copy? What do you mean you need a hard copy?
As in, you
Who
sign-
runs what government agency?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the president of your country pre-simulation denture. He's a puppet. All presidents worldwide are puppets. The Postmaster General is who runs your government. Who's on your money? Your president or your postmaster, Queen Elizabeth?
Well, where did you get this from?
That's the same in all countries worldwide.
And where
I'm
do
a
you get this
postmaster.
information?
Through studying how to be a postmaster. I have my sea pass, my sea treaty, my drogue law, my port authority, my judgeship, my kingship. I was elected king of Hawaii when the 52 families of the Hawaiian kingdom voted to elect me their king because I only did work in syntax, mathematics, and nobody can argue that 3 + 3 = 6, even though they fight amongst themselves on subject matter. They couldn't argue about math. So I wrote the apology bill for Bill Clinton, and it was upheld at the World Court at The Hague. Bill Clinton had to apologize to the Hawaiian people for stealing the Hawaiian Islands, and they elected me King of Hawaii, at which then I wrote the Constitution of Hawaii. I established the Constitution of New Zealand, Australia, and the United Nations. I then wrote the Charter Trust for the Kapuna Council, so that they had a legitimate council trust and constitution to operate government, got your license plates for the cars, driver's licenses for their driving, and public safety is the #1 jurisdiction over all countries and all things. If you maintain the rules and regulations of public safety, that you can read, write, have knowledge of how to operate the machinery of an automobile, you understand about not transporting chemicals or things that are deadly to other human beings, that you maintain good hygiene so that you don't get yourself sick and transport diseases, and you maintain a high standard of public safety, you will then be respected to be an independent people. Now, the Hawaiian people were never conquered by the United States government. And I'll do a little timeline here and show you how World War II started.
Are these public safety rules, can we download them?
Public safety? That's just your research. This comes from
Right.
74,000 hours of study.
Where can we get a copy of that?
In my books,
Okay, thank you.
my books go through all these different programs. Now, the reason I bring up this thing in Hawaii, because Hawaii unlocked the secrets of both New Zealand and Australia. You guys are cousins. The Maori people, the Aborigine people, by the way, it isn't Aborigine, AB means no origine. And Maori is an M-O-U, it's M-A-U-R-I. Yeah, M-A-U-R-I is the correct spelling, not O, there's no O in it. What I'll do is I'll put up the timeline of how this all took place and unlock the secret of who was in charge. And this just came about on January 6th of 2009 that we were able to break this code as a result of a little tiny newspaper article that we found in the archives at the Iolani Palace by accident. Now, we went down to the Iolani Palace and we wanted to know what happened in 1873. We wanted to look at a flag. And the librarian says, well, we don't have any flags. We don't have any newspaper articles from 1869 to 1875. And I'm going, well, that's impossible. You guys had treaties out here every couple of weeks because Hawaii was the hub of the Pacific. He said, nope, that 6-year block has been removed. So we went, he said, there's the card catalog, as big as that wall over there. So we started looking, and we found one card that said 1873, and it had a number on it. I said, what's this number mean? He says, well, it's microfiche number. So we went and got the microfiche film. And on this here, in 1873, they ran a newspaper, was about 11 inches wide and about 17 inches long. Now at the top had a flag, but it was the wrong flag of Hawaii. It had 8 stripes instead of 7. And Hightower was the one that found that. But in the bottom of the newspaper was the obituaries with 4 Masonic symbols, the all-seeing eye and the triangle. Now what they did here is there was 2 for the Eastern Stars in Portuguese and French, and 2 for the English and German Masons to all come to the Lodge number 1 across the street from the Ilani Palace. Now that Lodge number 1 afterwards in 1893 became the first post office in Hawaii, and a year later became the Supreme Court of Hawaii, same building. So this was Masonic. So we took the date, and the date was January, wrong color. They brought green. I can't win today. January 11th was the date of the newspaper. And it said they were ordering all people, all Masons, to come to Lodge number 1 on January 14th. Now it takes 3 days for the boats to go all the way out to the outer island, 220 miles, and 3 days to bring all the Masons back to Lodge number 1. So you had 6 days to here, and you get the 17th. And the 17th, January 17th, 1873, was the fulcrum of events to take place. Now, when all the Masons met at the lodge, they met on the 14th, and they cut a secret treaty with the post office to take over the Hawaiian Islands after all Hawaiians were declared dead 20 years later. It's called the Death Moratorium. Now, the Death Moratorium was established in 1849 by King Kamehameha III, and said that if you are off the land or dead for 20 years, the land is free for settlement. So then we went back before that, and October 22nd, 1872 was the first paper money issued in Hawaii. That meant that the post office through Bern, Switzerland, got the King Kamehameha V to file bankruptcy, ship the gold out, and bring paper money in. And that's when the paper money started in Hawaii. Exactly 45 days later, under Maritime Law of Trust, which was December 7th, King Kamehameha V dies. Yeah, dies, right. 45 days from the time he files bankruptcy, the bankruptcy trust expired. So now he is the last reigning monarch in Hawaii, and he dies, putting 1.8 million acres of land up for grabs, according to this treaty. That was better known as the Bishop's Trust, for those of you who know about it. Now this number, December 7th, is real keen. Now if you take 45 days from that, you get the 14th plus 3-day grace period, better known as the Lemon Law. You have the same thing in this country, a 3-day grace period when you sign a contract. So you got December 17th now, 45 days plus a 3-day grace period of 1873. Add the 20-year moratorium, you get 1893. And when did the United States government, or United States Postal Service, controls all military vessels in the United States and Japan? This is a real keen thing here. 1893, you get the 17th day of January, 1893, and that's when the United States government comes in with the warship and orders Queen Iolani to stand down. Now, through a little research, because I'm a 92nd degree Mason, Queen Iolani is an Eastern Star. Because she's an Eastern Star, she takes her orders from the Postmaster General of Hawaii, who was the Chief Master Mason. He takes his orders from the Admiralty warship that pulled into port on the 14th of January, 1893, under the 3-day law, ordering him to take over the palace. And Queen Iolani, on the 17th of January, goes ahead and surrenders Hawaii to the Masons, which are controlling the post office. And the post office, through the military, now takes over and declares the Hawaiian Islands to be a territory of the United States. Because there was no shots fired, the treaty that they wrote was written in adverb verb, which means it didn't say anything. They have no contract. The Admiralty has no contract to invade the island. But because no one can read and write at this point in history, everybody goes along with it. And because the Masons are controlling the post office, the post office is telling a senior postmaster is telling a Eastern Star queen to stand down. In order to become a Mason, you must surrender your kingship, queenship, or political title. If you're president, you have to surrender it to the Masons and take your orders from the post office. Same thing here in Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, the United States. The United States President, Obama, is the puppet. Potter is our Postmaster General. He's the one that pulls the strings and controls all branches of government. You have the same thing here, and that's why Queen Elizabeth's on your money. So it's a post office giving you orders, not the England. Now, if you bring this thing forward to October 22nd, 1872, plus 70 years, it comes out plus 45 days in the 3-day trusts. It's December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor gets bombed by the Japanese. The bankruptcy of Hawaii ends. 70 years, 45 days of trust and 3-day grace period. Except the Japanese Navy jumps the gun by 1 hour. And they bomb all the postal vessels of the United States Post Office, which are all the military warships and military warplanes. But they didn't bomb any civilian targets. But because Hawaii was not out of bankruptcy because of the 1-hour time difference, they violated the international laws of bankruptcy, which then gave Roosevelt permission to declare war against Japan. And we had to go to Tokyo to get the rest of the story on the post office. So it was the post office of Japan, which controls the military, bombing the post office of Pearl Harbor, which was the United States Post Office, because of trade imbalances. That's what started the war between Japan and the United States. And I have 2 videos where Fat Boy and Little Boy, better known as the atomic bombs, where the Postmaster General of Hawaii is slapping a $1 airmail stamp on the bombs, signing his name across it as postmaster, canceling the stamp, and saying, just to make it legal, we are sending the air freight back to Japan. And that was the post office going to war against the post office. Same thing took place between Poland coming out of bankruptcy at the stroke of midnight, 1939, and Germany invading Poland because they were no longer bankruptcy protection. That's how that all happened. The same thing takes place down here. Your post office runs everything. And because the post office controls all the vessels in dry dock, which are you, the people, you're required, you carry money in your pocket, and the money you carry in your pocket makes you postal employees of the post office. Therefore, you are vessels in dry dock, and you have to be licensed to go between point A and point B. You're corporate employees. Now, another question came up on birth certificates. What is your birth certificate? Your birth certificate is a document that allows the government, 45 days after you're born, you're a live individual under maritime law of trust, because you are an issue of state, better known as a, you are a child, C-H-I-L-D. Child means issue of woman. At the end of 45 days, you are a child, issue of state, and your birth certificate expires. And now you become, you get your Social Security number, $1 million. Back when I was there, it was only 600,000. Today it's $1 million based on inflation. Has to be placed into the system, and a bond is issued. And they sell these bonds on the New York Stock Exchange. The Securities and Exchange Commission, Australia is listed on the Securities and Exchange Commission. You guys are traded on the New York Stock Exchange, the country of Australia. You're a corporate entity. Okay, now, every person is born, you have to put this $1 million into the hopper, so there's money there, accumulating interest at 6% a year to offset inflation, to then supply the money necessary for you to be paid for your food, clothing, housing, transportation, all your toys you're going to buy throughout life, your gambling. Those that are better have more, those that are sloppy have less. And that's where how you get the money into the system. And it's a chain reaction that has to keep on going on and on and on. And that's the only way that commerce moves, so that you have some way to balance who has value. Because nobody wants to go out there and work for nothing. Question?
Who puts this money into the
Post
million?
office does. Because you're a vessel and a postal employee under the post office, and they're responsible for your care. That's why you have Social Security and social medicine. In the event any one of you that have a driver's license or Social Security card were to become injured, let's say get in a car accident and become a paraplegic, the state will come in, give you medical, food, clothing, shelter. You'll have a handicap sticker, and you'll get that for the rest of your life.
How does the post office take control of the human as opposed to the original
Voluntary compliance.
What is at which point? What is the voluntary compliance?
Well, when you turned 18 years old, you had one thing on your mind: girls, cars, and money. And the girls had one thing on their mind: boys, cars, and money. And it's sex. And sex is the number one motivator. You didn't care about politics. How many kids we got in here today? How many people under the age of 40 are in here? Oh, just 5. Okay, 5 out of 60 ain't bad.
I thought you said it happens 45 days after. But
Right, 45 days after you become a child, issue a state. If your mother and father neglect you, the state will come in, take you, put you in an orphanage, make sure you have food and clothing and shelter until you're 18 years old. They will educate you, send you to school, and on your 18th birthday, you have the choice to leave the orphanage and go out in the world. But every place you go, they're going to say, you want a license for driving? You want a license for work? You want money so that you can propagate the species and go out and meet girls and play. You didn't care about the post office when you were 18 years old. You weren't even a bit curious. And so when you're 40 years old and you wake up, you roll over and say, hey, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
So 45 days from birth, not from 18 years old.
Right.
They
Well,
take
no,
possession.
that's another thing. When you turn 18 years old, you got 45 days to make a choice. And even when you turn 18 years old, you also have to register for the draft at the post office, because the post office has a ball on top of the flagpole, because that is advertising that's advertising for recruiting for the military. Don't believe me? Go down to your post office, look at your flag outside. They got a ball on top. If they have a spear on top of the flagpole, that's for military court-martials. That's for inside your courthouses. Now, you guys don't have flags in your courthouses down here. You've got seals, but the seals are changing. Every time you modify the condition of the seal, you're in a different courtroom. So don't be gullible enough to think that the jurisdiction is really unique, because it's not. And they change jurisdictions every time you go into that court. If you don't know what's going on, they won't change it. But if you have knowledge, if they know you have syntax, if you're doing my paperwork, every time you walk through that door, they're going to change the rules on you.
What is the purpose of changing the jurisdiction?
Because under 45 days laws of trust, your old trust expires. The old cause of action expires. They'll even change judges on you every 45 days. So there's no continuance of evidence between one violation and another violation. And for you to go out and sort out where the violations took place, 99.99% of people don't have a clue that they're being harvested. Who stands at the bottom of Lady Justice here in Australia? Ever see a statue? Got a sword in one hand for enforcement, a scale in the other hand for balancing the good and the evil. And what lays at the feet of Lady Justice? Sheep. We fleece the sheep. We don't kill them.
Does that mean that if you go into a court that has changed jurisdiction, you can walk out?
No, that means if you walked in there, you acknowledge the fact that they had jurisdiction. It's called voluntary compliance.
But if you've only just become aware, let's say you walk into a court and you realize that they've changed the seal in the court and they've changed the judge, doesn't that give you the opportunity to
walk out? Well, let's see. If you walk into the courtroom, you don't have paperwork, you're going to be guilty of a Title 46, Chapter 781, a derelict vessel trespassing on a foreign vessel in dry dock without a passport or your papers. Now you're an illegal vessel that's just docked yourself on somebody else's vessel. Just like if you go out here to the harbor and try and get on a Japanese or Chinese ship out here without any ship's papers or permission to go up there, you will be arrested and put in a brig for trespassing.
Are they not under some sort of rule that if they change jurisdiction that they have to notify you?
You're supposed to know. Knowledge, ignorance of the law is no excuse. You have to know what all the jurisdictions are, all the seals are, all the placements. If you want to go and play in their sandbox, you got to know what the rules are. And what are the rules? It's called law of the flag, advertises the contract. But they don't use flags, they use seals.
But the contract means both parties. My understanding of a contract is where two or more parties are aware of all the conditions of the contract. And should one party change any of the conditions in the contract without the knowledge of the other party, it makes the contract null and void.
That's correct.
Therefore, they have a duty of care to inform the other party that they've changed in jurisdiction.
You never had any rules and regulations. Has anyone in this room ever filed a quantum lawsuit in court? No. You only had adverb-verb, rules, regulations, codes, lawsuits. You didn't put stamps or flags on your paperwork. Everything you've done in this country since 1800, since the English showed up here, has been a violation of syntax. And that lie is not just now, it isn't just here, it's 8,500 years running in 5,000 languages.
So what you're saying, since the original contract was based on no rules still apply, therefore any party can change the rules at any time without due notice.
Except for one little detail, they got guns and clubs, and they're standing there with guns and clubs on both sides of you, and you're totally intimidated because you don't know where you are, you don't know what you're doing, you've wandered into some place you shouldn't be, or you were doing something out in the real world you shouldn't have been doing. That's why you're in there in the first place. And so you didn't do your homework. You don't have a 6-year college degree to know what a barrister knows, but a barrister only knows how to read and write an adverb-verb. And he's restricted to do that because they have a code. No law or fact shall be tried in court. That is their law. That is their oath. Every judge, barrister, lawyer, attorney, worldwide, all countries, all languages swear to this because for 8,500 years, language has been bastardized. It is adverb-verb illusion. So you've got an adverb that's a negative adverb. Modifies the verb or is a conjunction. Back becomes a verb. Shall is a pronoun. Be is an adverb, making try to be a past time past time verb. In is an adverb, modifies the verb court. It's a dangling participle. You've got a verb law, a verb fact, and a verb court. You can only have one jurisdiction in court. It's called the least common denominator. In a math problem, you must always acquire the least common denominator in order to solve the problem. Your least common denominator is 1. You got one jurisdiction under maritime law, one jurisdiction under maritime facts, and one jurisdiction under maritime court called verb, which is an illusion. In an illusion, 3 plus 3 equals all numbers in the universe except 6. You can't try 3 plus 3 equals 6. You know how this started? 1980, they took away my children. I went to trial 65 times, and on the 65th trial, the judge says, you can have your kids. I am convinced that you are a good father and that you really want your kids. I'm going to sue you for apartheid. He says, I just gave you your kids. I said, every time I say yes, you said no. Every time I said no, you said yes. What's different today? And he says, because, he says, I have the power. I will say no every time you say yes and say yes every time you say no. I says, oh, I can't win. Is that right? He says, not a chance in hell unless I want to give it to you. I says, so you're telling me you're never going to agree with me? He goes, that's right. He says, I'm never going to agree with you. He says, it's my privilege to give you your kids. I says, it's 3 + 3 = 6. He goes, yeah. I says, you just agreed with me. He says, well, that's a math problem. No one ever went to war over a math problem. He says, oh, what you're saying to me then is, if I can discover the mathematical interface of all 5,000 languages, that you will give me my kids because I will bring a lawsuit to this court that has the accuracy of a math problem. He says, yeah, I'll do that. So I walked out of that courtroom. I says, all right. He says, you're a smart guy. The judge gets off the bench. He's out the door. I'm still in the courtroom picking up my papers, and he sticks his head back and he says, you're a smart guy, Dave. You'll figure it out. Well, on April 6, 1988, I broke the code and figured it out. You know what the first thing I did was? Went back and sued Judge Wasilewski for apartheid and genocide against humanity. I had 400 state judges and 38 federal judges recuse themselves in that lawsuit. And 14 judges, including Judge Statmiller, who was our chief judge, after he got locked out of 47 courtrooms that day, we ran around all day long. They were slamming the doors. He's pounding on the doors. Let me in. He says, no, you can bring that trash in here. All the judges knew about syntax by then. And they wouldn't. So Statmiller says, I'm chief judge. Nobody can overrule me. I'll take the case. Took him 20 minutes to recuse himself. And 400 other judges recused themselves, including the 38 federal judges. Then they brought Judge Moser in, 97 years old, off the bench, 28 years, retired. Sharp as a pin at 97 years old. I beat him twice, including defeated him from awarding 3 attorneys $54,000 in fees. He says, I don't know who you are. He says, but your statute of limitations is running out. Because I wouldn't give him my name. Wouldn't make contract with him. And I was right the whole time, and I won that case hands down. I've never paid an attorney in 30 years.
Somebody's asked me to ask this question: is what is the second degree Mason?
What is what?
What is a second degree Mason?
90 seconds.
Oh, 90-second? Okay, it holds the math interface in all 5,000 of the languages. When I travel around, I have Master Masons, 33, 34 degree Masons, and they want to know what the Masonic codes are. And I own 1 of 5 copies of Stanley Hawes' The Secret of All Ages. It's a big book. It's 15 inches wide, 2 feet tall, and 2 inches thick.
Big book.
Big book, 1,000 pages in it. The ones you can buy on the internet only have about half that information. But then I went ahead and I syntaxed it. 1/3 of all the words are missing from that book, so it's even bigger than that. The things that I do when I read information. Last night I pulled up the flag of Australia, the 1853 flag of the Aborigine people. And I syntaxed it. The Queen Elizabeth said that there is no flag that cannot be seen, and we will not acknowledge the people because they don't exist. And then signed it Elizabeth.
Really?
Which means she says there are no people, there are no rules, there are no regulations, there are no codes, there is not a flag. If you people want to believe in your illusion, I'll just italicize my name as Elizabeth, which means it's not on the paper. And it's called An Act. A-C-T. All words that start with a vowel. Illusion, I'll just italicized my name as Elizabeth, which means it's not on the paper. And it's called an act. A-C-T. All words that start with a vowel, A, E, I, O, and U, are followed by 2 consonants, means no contract. You're going to say, where do I find that rule? Look up every word in the dictionary. Get yourself a nice 8-inch thick Webster's Unabridged dictionary and look up every word that starts with a vowel and 2 consonants. And all the synonyms that reflect that word, and you will find a no contract, a negative condition of state for every single word.
So the word enact means no contract.
Right, ACT means no contract.
I was under the impression that the police was enacting an act of Parliament.
And how do you spell enact?
E-N-A-C-T.
Which means no. Act, which
So
means no
it's not a
contract.
verb.
So it's a no-no contract. Which part of no don't we understand? The N or the O?
So what you're saying is the whole court system, it's based on dealing with no rules, no law, and it's set up in such a way there is no way you can win even under their own system.
Nope, that's not true. Not
on.
anymore. Until syntax came along, till I showed up out here with the syntax on how to do quo warranto complaints and teach you guys how to do your quo warranto complaints. This is a room. This room has 4 corners. This is a box. In this box, this is an enclosed area. Everything that happens in here has nothing to do with the rest of the world. All the information you learn here today is in a closed area for you people only. So this is a isolated scenario.
This explains why they think they have the right to change anything that happens in a court that's being taped.
No. So it is written, so it shall be done. Does 2 plus 2 equal 4?
Well, that's what I was taught.
TO plus TOO equals FOR. TWO and TO equals FORE. Did you hear what I said when I meant what I said?
2
What I said
plus
when I
2
meant what I
equal
said?
4. You said 2 plus 2 equal 4?
Right. TO plus TOO equals FOR. I can do it 120 different ways.
I got it.
I think we need a wet rag here, or one with alcohol on it. In 4700 BC, Pharaoh said, "So it is written, so it shall be done." There was a reason for that. Because oral contracts cannot be seen or proven. Because of the argument, you got 2 Now, tilde is location. This is not a value. This is a location. The address on your home is a location. It is not a value. You write your address. My address is tilde 5166. Tilde north. North is not a direction. It's a location of direction. Tilde 63rd Street. And so, thank you. The city of Milwaukee is a name, but it's also a location on a map. So therefore it's a tilde Milwaukee, tilde Wisconsin, tilde zip code. Everybody goes, well, we got to put a bracket around so we're not in the postal zone. You put a tilde in front of the zip code. They copyrighted just the number. You copyrighted the location with a tilde. You are correct. They are not. So if you do So 7 times 7 is 49 times 6. 300 divided by 2 is 150. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Did you hear what I said, what I meant, what I said, when I said what I meant, what I said, and only one is correct? If you don't see it written, you can't prove it. Anybody wants, when you write a contract, you go into court, you have a syntax document. You are filing a lawsuit with an accuracy of 1 to 900 for every word. Your correct sentence structure, communication, syntax, balance of the order of operations of cause and effect, a verb of thinking, a possessive of with, and an authorization of by the, gives you an order of operations for every sentence that follows the rules of the operations of a court. So every single sentence is its own independent court as you make an argument. We're not dealing with 150 to 1 variables in an oral conversation. So your paperwork is going to speak for you. Why do you think the government shut the government down here in Australia and in New Zealand and the United States 19 times? Because they got caught in a lie and they didn't know what to do with themselves. They had to go out and study. They have to come up to speed with this thing. Every court in the world has to do this. And when you take English through syntax, through this program, and you translate it to Spanish, Spanish to French, French to German, German to Russian, Russian to Indian, Indian to Chinese, Chinese to Japanese, and back to English, you don't lose any words. It's a math problem. Just because there's 5,000 different signs and symbols for things, it's a math problem. You can't change a math problem. That's the accuracy and the beauty of this technology.
Should those two, second and third word, be reversed?
No, because you can take any one of these times any one of these to equal one of these. That's how you get your variables. 7 times 7 is 49, times 6 is 300 divided by 2. Otherwise, you repeat yourself.
Explain the TWO plus TWO.
This one, that's a tilde, it's a location.
The one above.
This is the number. This is the written number. This is the hieroglyph number.
How do you end up with 4?
F-O-R, F-O-R-E, F-O-U-R, the number 4, tilde 4. Those are locations when you put a tilde in front.
No, F-O-Y-E, doesn't that mean before?
It's what you hear, not what's written. Did you hear what I said? What I meant, what I said, what I said, what I meant, what I said. I'm communicating to you. It isn't what's written here. I'm writing to show you how many ways I can write it, to show you the variables. But when I speak it in one terminology, which one of the 150 variables up here that I just say to you? You don't know that. And because you don't know that, you're going to make a presumption, opinion, presumption, guess, perjury, a lie. How many different mistakes can you make? And that's only one word, or that's only 3 words. Try doing it with a lawsuit with 30,000 words on it. What do you think your variables are here? You're talking about quadruple terabyte to the terabyte power of variables. You can't get to a fact. If you can't have a fact, what are we doing? We're lying to each other. My technology brings us to a position of accuracy that cannot be argued. And the court room is a building. That is not the document on the piece of paper. When you write a lawsuit, the paper that you have, where's my paper? When you have the lawsuit, this is the court, folks. As a judge, I swear to support the Constitution of the United States. The United States means 2 or more people coming together in a closed area. Doesn't this have, 4 corners? This is a closed area. It's called paper. It carries the cargo words. The words have terms and definitions. This book not only has a sentence, but every word in this book is defined and has a syntaxed, quantumized definition. Every word is accounted for in this book, including a lot more words. It took Russell and I 6 years, 12,000 hours We had a team of guys breaking up A, B, C, D, E. And of all the 2 million words in the English language, we got 720 words that are syntaxed. That's it. Pretty simple. Average person has a 12,000 word vocabulary. You only need 720 to learn syntax. And in 99% of the cases, you use less than 50 different words in an entire lawsuit to win your case. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. It's so simple. Once you get it, it's mathematical. But this is the court. This is the contract between you and the judge. The courtroom is irrelevant. The seals that are hanging on the walls are irrelevant. This flag is the correct sentence structure communication syntax flag, which advertises that this is correct. You place a postage stamp up on your corner. You sign across it. That makes you the postmaster transporting the vessel of the document to the clerk of the court, which is the port of the court. She puts her stamp on it. When she puts her stamp on it, you sign your name across her stamp, making you a postmaster of not only your paperwork and your vessel, but now you're in contract with the port authorities of the court, because this is a courthouse, which is a foreign vessel in dry dock, so you've entered a foreign vessel. Now you're the postmaster and clerk of a foreign vessel in dry dock. Now you've got a 24-karat gold bonded document that has to go into court. But if you're going to sign the stamp on the front, you have to also endorse the back of the top of the cover page, because that's called an endorsement. How many of you can cash a check at the bank without endorsing your check? Nobody. Because if you take the document and you roll it up, when you unroll it, the top of the back, when they sealed those scrolls, they would put a seal on it. That was the endorsement. And that gave the document its value. And not only that, this book is bonded together. When I went to court in 1997, I used to have 3-ring notebooks with my paperwork in it. I went to testify. The judge says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm testifying to my book." He says, "That's all loose paper." He says, "You got to have a bonded book in order to be an author with the authorization to talk about the authority of your authentic document." And it's a document, that's why you get a docket number when the vessel comes to the court and it gets docketed.
Is a staple considered?
No, Staples, maritime law Staples is not bonded together. However, you put the staple as a mechanical device to hold the papers together, and then take super glue, put a drop on it, and the capillary attraction will fuse the papers together. You can have 3 forms of bonding. You can glue it, you can stitch it, and you can rivet it. I sent Janet Reno a letter charging her with treason against the United States, and she sent me back a letter, 2-page letter, with 6 3/8 of an inch brass rivets. There were 6 big, thick brass rivets to hold 2 sheets of paper. She says, "You want bonded documents? Here's a bonded document." But that's, I don't know if you've ever seen Janet Reno. She stands 6'8".
You went through that a little
next
fast.
to her, he's about this high. Yes?
You went through that a little fast. I'm sure some of the people here would like to use a basic, common practice that we have. Let's say we go to a court with a affidavit. Well, let's see if I get this correct. What you're saying is that we actually put our own seal and put some sort of stamp.
You're going to use your navigator stamp. Your navigator stamp has 2 bars through the dollar sign. Now, you have your dollar signs come in 2 forms. This is a Federal Reserve note, and that's a gold certificate. The navigator stamp of Australia is a gold certificate. In the United States, since 1900, the red fox stamp was the only one that was published with 2 bars through the dollar sign. And that was published on the 2nd of November 1999, when the United States ended its 3rd bankruptcy and became sovereign. And then when we went out and bought up all this, my students all over the United States went out immediately and bought up all the red fox stamps. And then we started putting them on all of our documents to sue government officials.
That explains why I can't find any.
The judges ordered that all the red fox stamps be canceled and seized wherever they were in the United States and destroyed, so that they didn't have any gold standard stamps out there. But we've got several thousand of them to use on all of our official documents that we use constantly.
Good, I'll see after. Okay, with the document, we put in a stamp if we can get one, and then we sign across the stamp. Then when we go to lodge it in a court, in a file, the court will stamp it with their stamp.
Yeah, they'll put the file stamp. See, now first you get what's called a receive stamp, which means they're going to receive the documents and they're going to issue a summons to come to court.
Right.
Okay, you have to then serve the document on the people and have your return service from the people you're serving a document on, and those have to be attached, return service, back to the court with your lawsuit, and then they will give you a file stamp, and then it goes to the judge for when you're going to have it and scheduled for hearing.
Here, the normal, my understanding of the normal procedure is that when you file it with the court, they put a stamp on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I don't think they write anything on it.
The clerk of the court, who is the port authority receiving a vessel at the desk, is supposed to put her initials on that stamp upon receiving it. And at the same time, the one that they keep for their file, you sign your name across that, as well as all those you're going to serve on the other people, making you a postmaster, bank banker, and judge because you canceled the stamp. That gives you the authority as a postmaster to transport the vessel of the lawsuit between your home and the port authorities.
So if there is a stamp on the documents they received, or the stamp on the documents you've received being served by them and has no signature of the person
then
who
you
carried
sign it. You take jurisdiction. Capture it. As long as you got their stamp, you sign across it, you captured their jurisdiction, you become the clerk of the court.
And what's the practical purpose for that?
The practical purpose is that you are the individual that's going to be transporting this document. If you don't sign it, you don't become the clerk, and you don't sign your name across the stamp, you've skipped over the postmaster's position to move the vessel. How does it go from point A to point B? Is it magic? You're creating a paper trail of authority. You're the author. You have the authority and postmaster to move that.
And when you hand that up to a judge, or the judge already has it in his file because we have filed it, how is he going to deal with that since you're the Postmaster General and he works?
He's a postmaster also. All judges are postmasters, bankers, and judges. Look up bankers in the Black's Law Dictionary. It says see postmasters and judges. Look up judges, it says postmasters and bankers. Look up bankers, it says postmasters and judges.
So the purpose of this procedure is to force a judge to consider the document presented in truth.
No, truth is an opinion, to be correct.
In opinion.
Right, and judges only issue opinions. The word order, O-R-D, vowel and two consonants, means no contract because he wrote the whole order in adverb verb. It's an illusion. You syntax any judge's orders he gives you, and even if he says you win, here's your win, in adverb verb, you haven't won anything. It's just an illusion. You syntax it and you say, I want to correct one. Write up your own order and syntax and have him sign it. He'll do it.
Thank you.
He doesn't want to think. Remember, the reason for thinking is to abolish thinking. Thinking hurts the brain. Thinking hurts the person. That's why we got ditch diggers and punch press operators, because it hurts too much to think. And people that want to think and they become great thinkers, you don't see them doing physical labor because they've learned how not to hurt. Their brain is a curiosity machine that just can't get enough. Question?
I wanted to go back to the 2022 when we come out of international bankruptcy. Does that mean Australia becomes a republic?
No, a republic means no people.
Okay.
A democracy means demonology. You're going to become sovereign. You become a sovereign nation on a gold standard because your country is only scratched a couple feet above the surface on how much gold you've got out here. You've got a lot of gold here. I mean,
does it mean that some other country can invade us?
It does, but it won't happen because of the toys that the planet has now in place.
Okay, cool.
Everybody knows what I mean by toys. Nobody's going to interfere. You guys are traded on the New York Stock Exchange. You're about as American as you're going to get down here, you know? Everything's about commerce. They don't want wars. You know, if you ask a military person, what is your job title? He says, I'm in the business of mind control. I control your mind or I replace it with a bullet. What do you think they got a war going on over there? Every time you got differences between two people, they either want to kill each other, they won't sit down and talk. I'll tell you a little story about something that happened. I'm over in Hawaii, and I'm flying back to the United States from Hawaii, going into, it was supposed to be a nonstop flight from Milwaukee to Chicago. I mean, from Honolulu to Chicago. And they stick me way back in row 70, I think it was row 75, on a 76-seat 747. And there's a lady sitting next to me. I says, what do you do? She says, oh, I'm a school teacher. So I'm going, oh, this is cool. We'll sit and we'll discuss syntax. And then her daughter is sitting next to her, and she's complaining about having to move all the time. I says, why don't you like it in Hawaii? Because she was going to the University of Miami. She says, no. She says, I got to move all the time. I says, well, why do you move? She says, well, my husband's in the military. And I says, well, what does he do? Well, he's in the Navy. What is he? He says, he's Admiral Nimitz of the Nimitz Attack Group. Pearl Harbor, aircraft carriers, about 35 ships. I'm going, oh, I'm sitting next to the wife of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and just got promoted to Washington, D.C., who's just been transferred from the Nimitz Attack Group to Joint Chiefs of Staff to handle the Israeli-Palestine uprising. And I'm sitting next to her, and I'm the guy teaching her syntax language. So the guy sitting directly in front of me all of a sudden like collapses. And it's supposedly he has a heart attack, right? Well, he's Secret Service. And stewardess comes over, captain gets on the phone a few minutes later. We need anybody that's a heart surgeon. We have a man with a heart attack. So the 3 heart surgeons show up, and they're all standing there. And they're not doing anything. The captain comes back and says, what's going on here? Why aren't you guys taking care of this man? He just had a heart attack. Well, we don't have a medical release. He says, you don't seem to understand. You're on my vessel, in my sea of space, and I'm the captain of this vessel, and I will lock you in the toilet in the brig if you don't take care of this man. So the one doctor, he goes over, and the guy grabs him, pulls him down, looking between the seats, and he whispers something in his ear. And he goes running back up to the front of the plane. The captain comes on the phone a few minutes later and says, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to stop in L.A. The man who had a heart attack needs immediate medical assistance. So we land in L.A. at the end of the runway. The whole plane gets surrounded by squad cars. In comes 2 guys with a stretcher and 6 guys in black uniforms. The 2 guys carry this guy off the plane, and the 6 black uniforms sit down in the row behind us. Secret Service, military Secret Service for the Joint Chiefs of Staff to protect his wife and the daughter. And I had 7 hours to teach her syntax language. I says, now, how do I talk to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and educate the Pentagon in Washington on syntax? Well, who sleeps with the Joint Chiefs of Staff? His wife, who's an English teacher and understands exactly what I'm saying. Her son just got transferred to Palestine in the Navy. I says, you want to protect your son? Talk to your husband about syntax. I'll write the syntax treaty between Palestine and Israel, and we'll stop the war. Now I have her attention. To save her son's life, she's going to learn about syntax. I give her one of my books. You haven't heard any noise from the Palestine-Israeli conflict in quite a few years, have you? It's been pretty quiet over there. You see, so sometimes God moves in mysterious ways. Puts people together. What is the Joint Chiefs of Staff wife doing in row 75 on a 747? She should be on a flying first class up in the front of the plane. circumstances because it was a sold-out flight and there was only two seats available at the back of the plane. And so she got stuck on there because of some other appointment that happened. And why was I sitting next to her? Of all people in the world, the only person with syntax in the whole world to be sitting next to her.
So what was the King of Hawaii doing at 676 since 74, 75?
I missed my plane. I thought I got the times wrong, so I missed my flight. I was in row 30. I always fly the exit rows in row 30. So I got a lot of leg room on the 747. So because I missed my flight, I got stuck in the back with her. So there was divine intervention that I misread my tickets, she misread her tickets, and we both wound up together in the back of the plane. So I had all this time to teach her about syntax. And shortly thereafter, I went to the Pentagon, and I became muster master for the Navy, which means I will protect all Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Army personnel from any apartheid or genocide lawsuits from any foreign government. That's my duties because I hold the syntax secrets. Was there a question? What do you mean? It's been 2 hours already? It's 11 o'clock. You guys want to take a 15-minute break?
I've got about a dozen of my clients here today, and you mentioned before that you're a 90-second Mason. A few of them have come to me at the break with concerns around that. Just wondering if you could qualify that so that they're...
Masonry worldwide goes up to 34 degrees. However, there's a... in Manly Hall's The Secret of All Ages, the amount of information that is in that one book is the accumulation of 8,500 years of history of all the different religions that have taken place throughout history, different cults, Pharisees, illusions that manipulated mankind, the creation of the boogeyman to keep people scared so that they could always look for protection from something. The Masonic codes, no matter what language it was written in, had 1/3 of all the words missing. And my technology through algebra puts the missing words in and brings it all into now time. It takes all negative out of the language and only brings it into a now time positive. So it allows me all the hidden secrets that are built into all the sentence structure. And so when I get with a group of Masons, they have their agenda of what they believe, but their beliefs were based on adverb-verb illusions. So then it's my job to go ahead and syntax it and bring it into now time facts and show them what the true meaning of whatever they want. The amount of information is so vast that for me to publish it, it'd be like trying to syntax the Bible or the Quran. I mean, these are huge books with thousands of pages. It would take a lifetime to do it. So based on each individual's needs, on whatever their limited education is based on, I will answer questions on a one-to-one, question-to-question basis and syntax it for you. And I'll do it for anybody at any time. We have ministers from all over the United States that contact me on email from all different faiths, and they want me to syntax a single phrase. And they will take that single phrase and make an entire 1-hour presentation to their parish. And where they used to have 30 or 40 people come to church, they have standing room only now because the people are there because they want to see the syntax facts. It changes your entire perspective of what truth is, or correctness.
33, 34 levels. You said you're a 97. What does that mean?
That means that my technology abridges all the Masons worldwide. The secrets that they think that they have are misinformation. And I don't practice any specific religion or faith. I believe in God. I believe in goodness. And I maintain my life to be in a correct position. And by being correct about things on a mathematical level, it allows me to talk to audiences that come from thousands of different cultures, definitions, religions, and maintain peace amongst my students. Because here's a technology that has to be translated to all 6 billion humans without insulting any faith, political belief, sex, customs,